Hello, I am Leonore, and today I will cross time to tell you the story of Hawaii, an archipelago born from the fire of volcanoes.
Long before European maps began behaving as if they had discovered the world, Polynesian navigators were already crossing the Pacific in massive double-hulled canoes. No compass, no sextant, and certainly no grand speeches about civilization. Just the stars, ocean currents, and a deep understanding of the sea that would make many famous explorers look like lost tourists. That is how they found these remote volcanic islands in the middle of an ocean most people then considered almost endless. The Hawaiian Islands existed long before any sailor appeared on the horizon. For millions of years, enormous volcanoes slowly rose from the ocean floor, pushing entire mountains above the water. When the first Polynesians arrived, they encountered a lush but demanding archipelago. So they did what they knew best. They cultivated the land, fished the surrounding seas, and gradually turned a wild landscape into a place where communities could actually thrive. Hawaiian society did not emerge through improvisation. The land was organized into systems called ahupua'a, territories stretching from the mountains down to the sea. It was an efficient way to distribute resources. Chiefs known as ali'i governed these regions, while a complex spiritual code called kapu regulated daily life. And yes, there were plenty of rules, and breaking certain ones could end in consequences that were, let's say, rather final. Even though the islands were separated by ocean channels, they were never truly isolated from one another. Canoes regularly crossed the waters carrying people, stories, and occasionally a bit of rivalry between competing chiefs. Meanwhile, culture flourished in close connection with nature. Chants preserved entire genealogies, dances told stories of the gods, and almost every mountain seemed to guard an ancient memory. For centuries, Hawaii lived largely outside the attention of the wider world. In the middle of the Pacific, the islands followed their own rhythm, guided by traditions, local chiefs, and a deep respect for land and sea. But as history often shows with peaceful places, sooner or later ships appear on the horizon, bringing ambition, curiosity, and people quite certain they have just discovered something that had been there all along. In 1778, something happened that history seems to repeat quite often. Someone decided to discover a place where people had already been living for generations. That someone was the British navigator James Cook. When his ships appeared on the horizon, those massive vessels looked entirely unfamiliar to the Hawaiians. For Cook, however, it was simply another stop on a long voyage of exploration, and, as usual, a quiet claim of discovery. The first encounter between Hawaiians and Europeans was curious, cautious, and even fairly friendly. Canoes approached the ships, food was exchanged, and both sides tried to understand one another. For a moment, the meeting seemed surprisingly peaceful. But when two very different worlds collide, simplicity rarely lasts. Gestures, symbols, and intentions soon began to be interpreted in ways neither side had originally intended. When Cook returned to the islands the following year, the atmosphere was no longer quite so friendly. Small conflicts began to appear, fueled by cultural misunderstandings and growing tension. In 1779, at Kealakekua Bay, the situation finally erupted. During a confrontation between British sailors and Hawaiian warriors, the famous explorer's journey came to an abrupt end, right there on the beach. Cook's death did not end contact with the outside world, quite the opposite. More ships began arriving on the islands. With them came traders, explorers, and missionaries. They brought weapons, new ideas, new religions, and, naturally, new ambitions. In the middle of this rapidly changing world, one leader emerged who would reshape the island's future, Kamehameha. Kamehameha was a warrior, a strategist, and above all, a man who understood the historical moment he was living in. By forming alliances and acquiring weapons through trade with foreigners, he launched campaigns against rival territories. After years of battles and negotiations, he achieved something no leader had accomplished before. uniting a large part of the Hawaiian archipelago under a single political authority. By 1810, after years of battles, alliances, and several rather convincing displays of power, Kamehameha achieved something rare in the history of the islands. He unified them under a single kingdom. Thus, the Kingdom of Hawaii was officially born. For the first time, the archipelago had a central government. It was a moment of stability, at least until foreign interests began noticing just how strategic and valuable these islands in the middle of the Pacific really were. It did not take long before foreign ships began appearing more frequently along Hawaiian shores. Traders were especially interested in sandalwood, a resource highly prized in Asian markets. The trade brought quick wealth to the kingdom, but it also demanded intense labor from the local population. Before long, much of the economy revolved around this export, a classic example of how global markets tend to reach even the most remote places. In 1820, Protestant missionaries from the United States arrived on the islands. They brought books, schools, and a strong desire to reshape Hawaiian society. They taught reading and writing, adapted the Hawaiian language to the Latin alphabet, and established new institutions. At the same time, many traditional practices began to be discouraged. A profound cultural transformation was underway, naturally presented under the far more appealing name of progress. Not all changes arrived in the form of ideas or religion. Along with the ships came diseases for which Hawaiians had no immunity. Epidemics of measles, influenza, and smallpox spread rapidly across the islands. Within just a few generations, the native population declined dramatically. It was a tragic development, and unfortunately, one that has accompanied many encounters between distant worlds throughout history. Meanwhile, foreign entrepreneurs began to see another opportunity. Hawaii's volcanic soil and tropical climate were nearly perfect for growing sugarcane. Soon, large plantations spread across the islands. To work them, thousands of immigrants were brought from places such as Japan, China, the Philippines, and Portugal. Gradually, the archipelago began to change, becoming something quite different from the old Polynesian kingdom it once was. By the late 19th century, the Kingdom of Hawaii still existed, at least officially. In practice, however, businessmen connected to the sugar plantations already held enormous political influence. Many were descendants of American missionaries who had arrived decades earlier with Bibles in their hands, and who now managed very profitable enterprises. Over time, their political ambitions began growing almost as quickly as the plantations themselves. In 1887, these businessmen decided that King Kalakaua had, in their opinion, far too much power. Their solution was a new constitution, politely accompanied by armed pressure. It soon became known as the Bayonet Constitution, and the name was not exactly symbolic. The document drastically reduced the authority of the monarchy and shifted much of the political power toward groups aligned with foreign economic interests. When the king died in 1891, his sister, Liliuokalani, ascended the throne. Unlike many around her, she believed the kingdom might still recover its sovereignty. When she attempted to introduce a new constitution to restore royal authority, opposition appeared almost immediately, especially from those who had grown quite comfortable with the existing balance of power. In 1893, leaders connected to powerful economic elites organized a coup against the monarchy. During the crisis, American troops landed in Honolulu, officially to protect foreign interests. Without sufficient military support and hoping to avoid bloodshed, the Queen chose to abdicate. A few years later, in 1898, Hawaii was officially annexed by the United States.
The islands born from fire, found by the stars and ruled by kings, ended up entering the history of a distant nation. There are still many stories hidden in time. If you want to cross through others with me, stay here.